All right, next game we're talking about another noon game is the MAC championship between Miami of Ohio and Ohio. It's in Detroit, noon Eastern time on ESPN. Playoff implications, again, there's no playoff implications in this game because both of them, Miami is 8-4 on the year, Ohio is 9-3 on the year. But Miami is going for their second straight MAC championship, while the Bobcats haven't won the conference in 56 years. It's a lot like Iowa State as well, where it's been a very long time since Ohio has won a conference title. Miami did play Ohio earlier in the season, back in October, and Miami won that game 30-20. So it's something to keep an eye on going into this game. But Dawn, you do have the Ohio offense in this one. What should we be looking out for when the Bobcats have the ball?
Well, at least somebody in Ohio will win in Michigan, right?
Yeah.
Anyway. We're done here. Don't plant any flags. All right. So I obviously, before this week, I hadn't watched a ton of Ohio Bobcat football. They played a good game against Syracuse way back in week 1. I remember that. And actually, coming off of that game, Anthony Tyus, their running back, had 200 rushing yards in that game. I was expecting to write down, okay, how do we get Anthony Tyus going against a really good Red Hawks defense? But actually, when I was watching more of this, especially down the stretch here, this team has kind of centered their run game a little more around Parker Navarro, their quarterback. And since week 5, he's in the top 5 among quarterbacks in rushing yards, yards per carry, and rushing touchdowns. So I believe it's a 79.6 rushing grade. Also, it's kind of this thing where, like Oklahoma State's offense, how they're in the pistol a lot, and it's very downhill running that duo, and they're like spread out. Maybe one tight end is in there, and it's just kind of a straight-ahead run game. That's kind of how it is with the Tyus part of it and the read option. But then there's some other stuff where they create some design runs for Navarro, and he's a good athlete. He's a good runner in open space, and I think that's going to be the biggest problem again. Now, Miami, Ohio's run defense, since MAC play has started for them, they've been the best run defense in the conference, right? They had a tough out-of-conference schedule, right? But since they got in the conference, led by 2 great linebackers, Matt Salopek, who I think we talked about a little bit last year when we previewed this game, and Ty Wise, great pair of linebackers. And the big thing in the first game was they held Navarro to 39 rushing yards, his second lowest total of the season. They stopped the run altogether for the Bobcats in the first meeting. They only had 65 rushing yards through the first 3 quarters of that game. Coming off of when they beat them last year in the regular season, they also only had 60-something rushing yards for Ohio in the game last year. So a big theme for me is, can Ohio, as they've done in several games recently as they've gotten hot down the stretch, can they find space for both Tyus and Parker Navarro in the run game? Because if they just get shut down in the run game, they're not quite good enough in the passing game to just walk out there and throw the ball every single play like that. I know they're spread out, but they spread out to create space in the run game, create space for their RPO game, obviously. That's a decent part of Ohio's offense. They're one of the more spread out teams in the MAC, okay? But you still have to run the football no matter how you get there. And Miami, Ohio, the last 2 times that they've played them, they've shut down the run. You see right there Navarro's numbers since week 5. He's been the center of this offense, especially his legs. So if he's not creating explosive runs, they don't have a whole lot of other avenues to score right now, especially against a really good defense like this.
Yeah, and when you look back at this game recently, Miami of Ohio also wanted to run the ball a lot. And usually it's a team that wants to throw the ball a lot with Brett Gabbard back there. But my matchup to watch on is, okay, well, Ohio's tackling problems persist. They have a serious issue tackling ball carriers right now. When these two met back in Week 8, Keon Mosey for Miami of Ohio had 111 rushing yards. All of them came after contact. All 111 yards came after contact in that game. Their other running back, Dylan Downing, he forced 3 missed tackles on only 7 carries in that game. Dawn, 93% of their rushing yards in that game came after contact. This is not exclusive to that game either. Ohio's had serious issues tackling ball carriers all year. They've missed 17% of their tackle attempts this year. That's the 16th highest rate in all of college football. And you combine that with the fact that Miami's run blocking grade is among the 15 best in the country. Again, it's the problem of, okay, if you're run blocking really well and you're creating, force down the field, and then your guys are breaking tackles as well, Miami could run all over them if Ohio does not wrap up a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you mentioned with Mosey, that's the first problem. And the MAC obviously is a tough, physical, run-the-ball, defensive kind of conference, right? And that's always the biggest concern. If you can't tackle against teams that want to run the football, guess what they're going to do? They're going to keep running the football, right? And you mentioned Gabbert, too. And I think, he got off to a slow start this season. He was coming off a horrible injury last year that ended his season, but he's only thrown 3 interceptions in his last 7 games here. And I think that's the biggest thing is he's become more of a complementary piece. You kind of thought, okay, they lost a lot of weapons in the offseason. How are they going to replace all these guys? So they haven't relied on Gabbert quite as much this year, but you're right. If you don't stop the run against either of these teams, you have a huge problem. But it's going to come down to Ohio's going to have to match that defensive intensity because Miami, they're a really good defense. And last year they were the best defense in the conference, arguably, alongside Toledo too. And this year, since conference play started, they've been the best defense. So Ohio has to match that. It's going to be a physical game, and you're right. The team that runs the ball better in this game is likely going to win it.
Yeah, and you just look at, like I said before, Miami wants to throw the football a lot in their offense right now with Brett Gabbert, and they found out quickly in that game that, hey, that we should be running the ball a lot more, honestly. And they found out quickly, and they just kept running that football. And they've thrown the ball on about 57% of their plays. You're top 50 rate in the country. But in that game, they really relied on the run game because they knew, hey, Ohio's really having issues tackling our ball carriers. Just keep running down their throat. And it worked for them in that one. So ultimately, Dalton, will Miami again beat Ohio this year? Or will Ohio win this game and clinch their first conference title in 56 years?
I like Miami in this game. I think we came into the season figuring they were the best team in the MAC. It had a windy road to getting there, especially their out-of-conference schedule didn't look great. I believe they started 1-3 or 1-4, and then they've got raging hot down the stretch here as they've gotten really back into their identity. But I like Miami 31-21. Just the last 2 games, what I've seen them play against Ohio, went back and watched them, and it really just starts with their run defense and Salopek and Wise at linebacker. And as good as they are in that front 6, they're so good. They're so good at tackling, and they're so physical, and they stay in their lanes and in their run fits, and they're just so fundamentally sound on defense. That's the part I'm trusting. And then I think Mosey and Gabbert do enough to get the job done on offense. I've got Miami 31, Ohio 21.
I also got Miami winning this game, and I also have Ohio scoring 21 points, but I have it a lot closer than you. I have it 24-21. I have a 3-point game right there. I think it'll be a pretty low-scoring game. I think there are 2 offenses that really want to establish the run in this game. But like you said, I trust Miami's defense to come up more stops and tackle a lot better than Ohio's defense right now. So that's kind of the difference for me and why I'm picking Miami this game. But I do think it'll be a very, very good game, and I do think Miami will win the MAC championship once again. Their second straight year they will win the MAC championship if they do win this game. So should be a really fun game at noon. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.